You are going to die. And right now, in this exact moment, someone with the same 24 hours you have is building generational wealth while you're watching this video. That's not an insult. That's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in your life has ever sat you down and explained. The difference between the person drowning in credit card debt and the person quietly building an empire isn't intelligence. It isn't luck. It isn't even hard work. It's something far more invisible, far more dangerous. And once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. It's how they experience time itself. Imagine standing on a street corner in colonial Philadelphia in 1748. No smartphone, no alarm clock, no boss sending you Slack messages at 10 p.m. Time was circular. You woke with the sun, worked, rested, and the cycle repeated. It was slow. It was human. Then a man named Benjamin Franklin wrote 4 words that quietly rewired the American brain forever. Time is money. That phrase, buried in his essay, Advice to a Young Tradesman, didn't just become a motivational poster. It became the operating system of the modern United States. Suddenly, every idle hour carried a price tag. Every Saturday afternoon spent on the porch wasn't rest. It was loss. And that one psychological shift created 2 completely different types of people who are still walking American streets today. Think about the smoke-filled factory floors of 19th century Pittsburgh and Chicago. For the first time in human history, workers were timed by machines. If you punched in 1 minute late at a Ford plant, your pay was docked. If you took too long on break at a textile mill in Massachusetts, you were fired and replaced. This mechanical relationship with time burned itself into the working class brain like a brand. And here's the devastating part. That brand gets passed down. Not through genetics, but through behavior. Through the way a father talks about his job. Through the anxiety in a mother's voice when a bill arrives. Psychologists call what emerges from this environment a scarcity mindset. And once it takes root, it changes everything, including how you see the clock on your wall. When you're poor in America, and I mean genuinely struggling, choosing between the electric bill and groceries at a Walmart checkout line, time stops being a resource. It becomes a predator. Every second carries the weight of a deadline, a late fee, a shift you can't miss, a call from a debt collector. Your brain enters what neuroscientists call cognitive tunneling. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning and big-picture thinking, literally narrows its focus to the immediate crisis in front of you. You're not lazy. You're not irresponsible. You are a person running full speed from a lion. And nobody is going to stop mid-sprint to think about where they want to be in 10 years. The poverty trap isn't just about money. It's about the mental bandwidth that money buys and that financial stress destroys. Now contrast that with a ledger I came across from a 19th century merchant, a man who, by the standards of his day, had figured something out that his neighbors didn't. He didn't see time as a predator. He saw it as an employee, a silent, tireless, unpaid worker who never called in sick. Consider Hetty Green, known as the Witch of Wall Street, who became the richest woman in America in the late 1800s. She wore the same black dress until it disintegrated. She lived in cheap New Jersey boarding houses. She ate cold oatmeal to avoid the cost of heating it. Her neighbors in New York's financial district thought she was losing her mind. But her private journals revealed something terrifying in its clarity. She had mastered what I call time arbitrage. She spent hours hunting for cheap living arrangements, not out of poverty, but as a deliberate strategy, so that every molecule of her mental energy could be poured into compound interest. She understood at a bone-deep level that $1 invested in 1875 wasn't just $1. It was a seed that, given enough decades, would become a forest. She wasn't frugal. She was playing a completely different game. In the 1960s, a Stanford psychologist named Walter Mischel ran what became one of the most famous experiments in American behavioral science, the marshmallow test. He placed a marshmallow in front of a 4-year-old and made them a deal. Wait 15 minutes without eating it, and you get a second one. The children who waited, Mischel's research suggested, went on to have higher SAT scores, better health outcomes, and higher incomes. For decades, this was held up as proof that self-control is the secret to success in America. But here's what the follow-up research revealed. The part that nobody talks about at motivational seminars. The kids who ate the marshmallow immediately, most of them came from unstable homes. Homes where later was never guaranteed. Where food disappeared. Where promises were broken. Where the future was genuinely unreliable. They weren't failing a self-control test. They were making a rational decision based on their lived experience of the world. If you grow up in an environment where the future is uncertain, you eat the marshmallow. Every time. This is what economists call high time preference. An intense bias toward the present moment. And in modern America, it manifests as buying the Air Jordans today because your unconscious mind doesn't trust that tomorrow is real. There's a particular kind of noise that fills the life of the financially struggling American. It's the ping of a notification, the ring of a phone, the buzz of a boss's email at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Most people spend their entire lives as human pinballs, knocked from one urgent thing to the next, never choosing their own direction, always reacting to the loudest noise in the room. Now compare that to the daily routines of the Gilded Age tycoons. Andrew Carnegie, the Pittsburgh steel magnate who went from a $1, $20-a-week telegraph boy to one of the richest men in human history, had a habit that baffled his colleagues. He would sit for hours in complete silence, staring at a fireplace or a blank wall. No meetings, no telegraph messages, just stillness. His contemporaries assumed he was wasting time. What he was actually doing was what I call deep time thinking. He wasn't reacting to the market. He was anticipating where the American steel industry would be in 25 years, and positioning himself there before anyone else could see it coming. He understood something profound. The most valuable thing you can do with your time is not act, it is to think. If you are constantly busy, you are likely standing perfectly still. Busy. Here's something that neuroscience has confirmed that the wealthy have understood intuitively for centuries. Time isn't just a scheduling resource, it's a biological one. Every time you switch tasks, from a spreadsheet to an email to a text message to a meeting, your brain's prefrontal cortex pays a tax. Decision fatigue is real, and it accumulates. This is why, after 8 hours of punching a clock at a job you didn't choose, sitting down to work on your own business feels impossible. You don't have a time problem, you have a decision capital problem. The most elite performers in American business history didn't just manage their calendars. They managed their cognitive energy like a finite and precious fuel. They protected the early morning hours. They bathed decisions from the world in layers of routines, assistance, and structure, not because they were lazy, but because they knew that one great decision, made with a fully loaded brain, was worth more than 1,000 hours of exhausted grunt work. They didn't let the world drain their clock. They filled it themselves, first. But here's the part of this story that nobody wants to tell you, because it doesn't fit neatly on a motivational poster. Sometimes, the obsession with the future becomes its own kind of poverty. In 1895, George Vanderbilt, heir to the greatest American fortune of the 19th century, opened the doors of Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, 250 rooms, 8,000 acres, the largest private residence ever built in the United States. He had spent a decade of his life, and the vast majority of his fortune, building a monument to future legacy, and then he died at 51, nearly bankrupt from the upkeep of his own dream. He had used time as a weapon to construct immortality, and in the process, he had forgotten to actually live. The poor mindset is trapped in the past and the crushing present. But the extreme wealthy mindset can leave you stranded in a future that never actually arrives. You spend your whole life preparing to live and never do. True time freedom isn't found at either extreme. In the early 1900s, the brilliant British economist John Maynard Keynes made a prediction. He said that by the year 2000, technology would be so productive that the average American would work 15 hours a week. We would face, he genuinely believed, a crisis of leisure. He was spectacularly wrong. Technology didn't give us more free time. It made us permanently reachable. It converted the entire country into a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week factory floor, one where the factory follows you into your bedroom, your bathroom, and your family dinner. And here's the darkest irony. Today's ultra-wealthy, the Silicon Valley billionaires, the hedge fund managers, the private equity titans, are, by most measurable standards, more time poor than the Gilded Age robber barons they admire. They have successfully escaped financial scarcity, but they've walked straight into a new kind of prison, wealthy exhaustion. They own watches worth more than most Americans' annual salaries, but they don't have the freedom to take them off. Every single time you say yes to a distraction, a show you don't care about, a social media scroll that goes nowhere, an hour of complaining about something you won't change, you are saying no to your future self. You are making a trade, whether you acknowledge it or not. There's a story, perhaps apocryphal, but deeply true in spirit, of a clockmaker in 17th century London who spent 3 years building a single gold watch for a nobleman. 3 years without payment. His neighbors, tradesmen and shopkeepers thought he had lost his mind. Why wouldn't he take small repair jobs for quick cash? Why was he gambling years of his life on one commission? When the watch was completed and delivered, the nobleman paid him enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life. The clockmaker understood something that most Americans, conditioned by a paycheck-to-paycheck culture, find almost physically painful to accept. Small wins are the enemy of great victories. The broke mindset seeks the dopamine hit, the instant reward, the quick cash, the immediate validation. The wealthy mindset seeks the massive, patient, delayed payout, the one that doesn't just change your bank account, but changes your family tree. There's a specific texture to a life stuck in the broke time loop. It's the glow of a television screen at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's the automatic thumb scroll through content you'll forget by morning. It's the state of passive consumption. And it is the most quietly devastating thing happening to American financial futures right now. When you are passively consuming, you are not resting. You are being harvested. Every hour you spend on a platform designed by a Stanford PhD in behavioral psychology is an hour of your attention, your literal life force, being packaged, sold, and delivered to an advertiser. The billionaires who built these platforms are not watching them. They are obsessive producers. They don't watch the game. They own the team. They don't read the news. They shape the narrative. They understood, before most people had the language to articulate it, that time spent consuming is time spent making someone else rich. The most disturbing realization in this entire conversation is this. We are all born with the same number of seconds, but we do not all own them. If you owe money to a bank, a mortgage, a car payment, a student loan, a credit card balance, you do not own your time. The bank does. You have, in the most literal sense, sold your future hours to a financial institution in exchange for something you wanted right now. This means that a 23-year-old with no debt and $800 in a savings account in Omaha, Nebraska, is richer in time than a 45-year-old with $1 million home, a lease on a BMW, and a portfolio of debt that requires 60 hours of work a week to maintain. True wealth, the kind that actually feels like freedom, is the ability to wake up on a Wednesday morning and ask, what do I want to do today? Not, what do I have to do today? Most Americans are running a race where the finish line keeps moving further away because they keep acquiring things that demand more of their time to maintain. So how do you break the cycle? It starts with something I call the internal audit, a brutally honest accounting of where your seconds are actually going. Pay attention to the moments in your day when you are killing time. That phrase alone should shake you. To kill time is to commit a slow, quiet act of self-destruction. The financially successful people I've studied across history share one near universal trait. They treat time with a reverence bordering on religious, not in a joyless, efficiency-obsessed way, but in the way that a person treats something they know is finite and irreplaceable. You can lose your entire net worth and rebuild it. Andrew Carnegie did. Walt Disney went bankrupt twice. Henry Ford's first company failed, but not one of them ever recovered a single lost hour. The 18th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that the common man is not concerned about the passage of time. The man of talent is driven by it. You have to feel the urgency of your own mortality, not as a source of anxiety, but as a source of clarity. Do not wait for a better time to start. That belief that there is some future Tuesday when your life will be quieter, your debts smaller, your schedule cleaner, is the most expensive hallucination in America. The factory whistle will always be blowing. The bills will always be arriving. The notifications will always be pinging. The only time that actually exists is the one happening right now, in this breath, in this heartbeat. The rich mindset is not about being greedy for money. It's about being absolutely, unapologetically greedy for your own life. It's about refusing to let your seconds be auctioned off to the highest bidder, whether that bidder is your employer, your debt, or a tech platform built to consume your attention. Look at whatever device you're watching this on. Someone became extraordinarily wealthy from the time you spent on it today. The question is, are you going to spend the rest of your day making someone else richer? Or are you finally going to start building something of your own? You have the same hours that Carnegie had, that Hetty Green had, that every person who ever built anything lasting ever had. The clock is running. It has always been running. What are you going to do with the time that's left?